think now is a pretty fair time to talk about my thoughts on New World, don't you think? It's been out for a while. Heads up everybody, my name is SentinelGray and welcome to the channel. New World is the relatively new MMORPG made by Amazon. You know, that company that gets you stuff shipped to your house in like 2 days. Yeah, that Amazon. With Amazon having their fingers already in gaming stuff because Twitch and their Prime gaming partnerships, they apparently thought it was a good time to make an actual game or something like that. No, but seriously, New World isn't a bad game. Not by a long shot, believe me. It could have been. It could have been terrible, but it's actually not that bad. New World to me, at its base, is a very simplified MMO. You can wield swords and magic and do special non-combat skills like woodworking, cooking, potion crafting, that sort of thing. I've seen this game to be compared a bunch to RuneScape, and honestly, I think that's pretty fair. Neither game has a class system, both games have a wide variety of crafting, gathering, and refining skills, and both games have an in-player driven economy. At least I'm pretty sure RuneScape does. Last time I checked it does, which was way back in the early 2000s. God, I feel old. However, for me, I feel New World scratches an itch that RuneScape was never fully able to get, if that makes any sense in any sort of disgusting little way. In both games, you can definitely go out and spend a whole entire day increasing your logging skill by going down and chopping trees, you know, that whole entire thing. But for some reason, it just feels better. It feels more satisfying in New World than it does in RS. I don't know if it's because of the progress bar whenever you're doing any sort of gathering skills or anything, because like everything in New Worlds has a progress bar. It's like gamification to the max. Or maybe it's because whenever you chop down trees, you actually get to watch them fall down. I have no idea. I honestly don't. But I feel far more satisfied playing New World than I ever did playing RuneScape. Granted, yes, RuneScape was a while ago, but still. Like, you can actively see yourself gathering better and better resources from things that you've worked towards and that things that maybe you couldn't access to later on. Like maybe you couldn't chop down that tree like 2 hours ago. Now you can. Plus, once you level to a certain point, like certain amount on certain gathering skills, the game tracks where specific materials are for you to go and get just in case you want to hunt them down or farm them. On top of that, everything you do in the game rewards you with XP to level up. So if you want to level grind in the first town just by logging, mining, and harvesting, there's literally nothing stopping you from doing that. I know that's what I did for the longest time while I waited for some of my other friends to get the game. I had nobody to play with, so I was like, well, I might as well do my gathering skills since I'm here. And that's what I did the entire time. I'm halfway through all the levels. I'm level 30, and the vast majority of that I've done is just gathering stuff and making things. My crafting levels are insane comparatively speaking to where my combat levels should be. And I honestly don't think that's a bad thing. Because I've increased my level so much, because my crafting and gathering and like all those other skills, all the non-combat skills are up so high, any new friends that come into the game, I can immediately load up with new gear or like anything up to the max that they can possibly have without any real issue. Not only that, but whenever you start fighting some of the enemies that are later in the game, like as an example, you start out at level 1 on every single type of weapon or equipment or whatever the hell you want to call it. Whenever you go and fight higher level enemies that, you know, your level 1 skills can just barely take down, you gain a ton of XP for it. So being able to level weapons that you haven't used before is a whole hell of a lot easier whenever you're in the later levels. Personally, I've become used to the whole class-based system in video games. I see it in Destiny, I see it in Final Fantasy XIV. Granted, Final Fantasy XIV I haven't played nearly as long as I've played Destiny. Just started 14, by the way. And you can somewhat say that I see it in Warframe, depending on how you want to look at Warframes. But I do appreciate it whenever I don't have to stick to a class and could do whatever the hell I'd like to do, similar to Skyrim or Fallout. New World doesn't have any classes or any of the traditional MMO roles for that matter, which can be a bit confusing for those of you out there who are MMO vets and technically like those roles and like want to fill those roles and that sort of thing. There's nothing in the game that comes straight out and says, use this for DPS or use this for tank, which might turn a lot of people off but there sure is a hell of a lot of ways already that players are finding ways to build themselves out into those sorts of roles. There's tons of DPS guides out there, DPS builds, tank builds, support builds, AoE builds, that sort of thing. Support's pretty easy though, don't get me wrong. There's only really one support weapon in the game, and that's the life staff. Spoiler alert. This whole system might be annoying to some old school MMO players. Believe me, I totally understand. But I think this approach is really welcoming. Like I said earlier, to me, New World is a simplified version of an MMO. For myself, I was never really somebody who played MMOs before in the past. Granted, I don't really count Destiny as a normal MMO. Destiny is very much its own beast. It's not that I was against the genre or that I'm against the genre in general. It just so happens that I never really played during the big boom that was World of Warcraft in the early 2000s. I just had absolutely no experience in MMOs. New World to me is very good for an entry-level MMO. Since there's no mandatory classes and the skills in the game are pretty much free to chase as you see fit, it might be a great place for people to start who want to give traditional MMOs a decent try, but don't want to get bogged down in everything that games like Final Fantasy XIV and WoW and Guild Wars kind of like pile on you, or can pile on you if you're not careful. Another thing too that would help with new players is the combat system. The combat system isn't like your normal MMO. There's no keys. You don't do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thing on your keyboard or anything like that. For New World, it's more reactionary combat. It's guarding and blocking and dodging, and you do have abilities that you can use at certain times or whatever that go on cooldowns, and you attack and you press this button to attack. Similar to Skyrim, just putting it out there. Similar to Skyrim, not similar to Final Fantasy or WoW, which I think is really nice. It's not that this game does everything great. There's a bunch of things that it severely lacks in. Like, a few downsides that I can think of is like the lack of quest diversity, matchmaking options, and the apparent lack of end game activities. More often than not, for quests, you'll just be given a quest that is, go here, kill this thing, go here, pick this up, and then come back. They're fetch quests. That's all they are. It sucks. Granted, there's a whole entire quest line based around fishing, but I mean, that is one quest out of potentially hundreds. That's very different. Almost all of the quests seem like they are very straight to the point of go kill, go gather, come back, have fun. That's cool. Bye. The only time where you actually go into anything that has any sort of different objectives for you is whenever you go into a dungeon. And even still, quests that are basically 4 dungeons that are given to you that you have the option to grab before you go into a dungeon are the exact same thing. Go in this dungeon, grab this item from this boss whenever you kill it. Like, it's the same thing over and over again, and it just sucks. Not only that, but almost all of the enemies are the same. There's, no matter what level you're at, if you're at level 1 or at level 50, there is a skeleton archer, or a pirate with 2 pistols, or this big wolf. And granted, they change, like end game, they change a little bit, but as far as enemy diversity, in an MMO, in a game like this, there is probably, I don't know for certain, but there's probably at max of 50 different types of enemies that all they do is change the enemy location, increase the level, and change the name. It really kind of sucks. Granted, you know what you're running into whenever you, like, let's just say you ran across these pirates back in level 10, and you run across more pirates at level 50. You know how to fight them. You know how to beat them. That's cool and all, but like, just shake it up a little bit, because it gets a little boring, gets a little samey after a while. The real unfortunate part, especially for me, because I have a big problem with this, I don't know how many people are out there similar to me in this regard, but I am one of those people to where I am not very social on the internet, which I know is for some people, very hard to believe. But I'm not really good at reaching out and asking people for help, asking people to play, that sort of thing. Not only is it a sense of I feel like I'm bothering people, but it also is a fear of I do not want to reach out to somebody and play with them and then them end up being an asshole, because that can happen all too easily nowadays. And especially since you don't know the type of game that you're going to like, you don't know the type of person that you're going to get in the game that you're playing. You don't know how the community is, especially with a new game like New World. Not 100% sure how the community is. Is it super toxic? Is it just super friendly? Don't know yet. But the big problem about this is that there's no matchmaking in the game. So if you want to go do dungeons, expeditions, whatever, you have to type in the recruitment or in the global chat of, hey, does anybody want to do this? LFG. You basically put LFG, DPS, whatever the dungeon or expedition is. And that's it. And that's if anybody answers you. And even still, it depends on what server you're on, because certain servers have a lot of people, certain servers do not. So it's very up in the air on whether you're actually going to get somebody to play with or not, which is a place that I'm in right now. Don't have a lot of people to play with, and it sucks. And not being able to matchmake for certain activities. I'm in a main quest step right now to where I have to do a dungeon, and I had nobody to do it with. I tried asking around. I tried doing the whole like, hey, looking for a group to do this. Nothing happened. I feel there needs to be some sort of matchmaking thing to where doing older stuff, older content, under-leveled stuff is encouraged. I don't know what, like, believe me, I do not know. Like, I think Final Fantasy 14 has a good system like this to where they encourage players who are max level to go back and do these. They knock your level down all the way to where it should be and then have you go through it again for more XP, more gear, whatever. I feel like something needs to be in place with this here in New World. Now, to anybody who is a vet or knows a good bit about MMOs, you probably have maybe picked up the fact that I have not said the word raid yet. Well, that's because there are none. There are no raids in New World. New World is a game that focuses more on the PvP than the PvE. Most of the end game revolves around these 50v50 wars that happen between the three different factions of the game. The only thing that comes close to this, on the PvE side at least, is something called invasions, which takes place on the same battlefield as wars do, but at different times. And invasions are an absolute mess for so many different reasons that I honestly do not want to go into for this video. But basically what I need you to do is, if you are interested, go in and look up what invasions are and everything in the invasions in how they're set up and what happens and everything. I'll tell you the main thing though, the main thing that gets me. Invasions are a PvE 50v AI battle that takes place in different territories and are apparently the hardest things in PvE terms in the game to do, but come with huge drawbacks. If you don't successfully repel an invasion, your town loses levels in certain crafting stations. So a max tier 5 smelter can be brought down to tier 3 if you lose an invasion, which prevents you from making any of the end game materials you need from that smelter. You understand where I'm going with this? I think as of me making this video currently right now, there has only ever been a handful of servers who've actually successfully repelled an invasion, which to me is a little insane. And not only that, but like I said, there's things about invasions that make them such an utter pain in the ass to deal with. Granted, I am not the level for invasions. I will tell you that right now. I have watched other streamers, other content creators, one namely being Dr. Lupo. I've watched him go through his adventure in New World. I've watched him do wars. I've watched him do invasions, and invasions are a thing that literally everybody who is in the invasion was not a fan of because how it was set up and because of what happens when you lose and how ungodly difficult that it is. Granted, difficulty will come with time, knowing the whole entire thing, but the fact that you lose so much for losing an invasion is just a little too much. It's a lot, especially for this game. Even with all that, I still think the game's a lot of fun. If anybody came up to me and asked me like whether they want to play it or whether they should play it, I would 100% tell them yes. I think it's a lot of fun. I really do. Granted, there are issues, like I stated. There's even more issues than that I know of in the game. I just didn't want to go over everything. But every game's going to have that. As long as they start ironing out those issues and start working on things for the future, I feel like New World can be a really good game. Like, it has the potential to be really great for a long time. They just need to fix the things that need fixed. But once again, that doesn't mean I wouldn't recommend it. I do. Anybody who comes to me and asks me if it's like RuneScape, like my one friend did, I will tell them yes, except it feels a lot better than RuneScape in my opinion. And anybody asks for an intro MMO, I would give them probably New World. It's a lot. It's a whole lot. I still would recommend it. I still have a lot of fun playing it. But that is going to be it for me for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I really want to know actually what other people think about New World, whether you're a veteran MMO player or you're somebody who doesn't play MMOs on a regular basis and decided to jump in on this one. What do you think? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below. I am very, very curious about this. But I will see you guys next time. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Remember, keep your heads up and be kind to each other. Bye now.